I still remember the first time I entered that huge house. It was a different world of mine, full of luxury, expensive furniture, and a silence that made me rest. I had gotten a job as the nanny of Lucas's son, an important, charming executive, and dangerous. His wife, Sophia, was almost never home. I was traveling to work, which left me alone with Lucas most of the time. At first, he seemed indifferent, always serious, always busy. But I felt something there, a look, a detail in the way he watched me when I thought I wasn't seeing. One afternoon, as I played with his son in the living room, I noticed Lucas leaning against the doorway, looking at me with a half smile. "You bring a light to this house," he let out of nowhere. I was without reaction. Was it an innocent compliment or not? From that day, it all started to change. The long eyes, the conversations that seemed to have a double meaning, the feeling that that powerful man was interested in something beyond the professional. And the worst of all, I felt my body answer that. I tried to ignore. I convinced myself that it was my head, but it wasn't. Luke's time-consuming looks continued. Small compliments escaped at random times. "I like the way you take care of him," he said in that serious voice, looking at me in a way that made me feel an internal heat. There was tension in the air, something silent but intense. Every time we passed each other in the corridor, it seemed that the space between us diminished a little more. I felt his perfume, woody, male, engaging. One night, as I straightened his son's toys in the living room, Lucas passed behind me and brushed his hand lightly on my waist. It was subtle, fast, but enough to make me goosebumps. My heart fired. "Sorry," he murmured, but without looking away. I should have taken a step back. I should have walked away. But when I looked at him, I saw a corner smile and felt my own body answer. The next day, the messages started. Small provocations disguised as small conversation. It was as if we were testing limits, flirting without words. I was getting into a dangerous game, and the worst? Part of me wanted to play. That night, the sky collapsed. The rain was hit hard against the windows, thunder echoed around the house, and suddenly the energy fell. The silence was cut by his voice, hoarse, just behind me. "I think we'll have to wait a while. How about a drink?" My heart leaned. Alone, in the dimness, with the tension already on the edge, I should refuse. But my mouth formed another answer before I could avoid. Only one. We sat on the couch, only one candle illuminating the environment. The soft light created shadows on his face, making him even more irresistible. I tried not to face him, but I felt his eyes on me. "You're different," he said, sliding his fingers down the edge of the glass. I tried to laugh, but sounded nervous. "Different how?" He leaned slightly, his knees almost touching mine. "Since you arrived, I can't stop thinking about you." The air got heavy. My body wanted to give in, but my mind screamed danger, so I felt. His fingertips brushed my leg, very lightly, but enough to shiver all over. My body burned, and he noticed. "You feel that too, don't you?" His voice was almost a whisper, swallowed, dry. I needed to get out of there. Now. But did you really want? The atmosphere was loaded. The low light, the heavy rain outside, his smell so close. Everything contributed to increasing that feeling that something inevitable was about to happen. Lucas was closer every minute, and I felt the warmth of his body so close to mine that it was almost torture. I shouldn't be there, but my muscles looked like, unable to react. I felt a shiver up the back of his neck when he slid his fingers down his own glass, as if it were just a casual game for him. But it wasn't. The silence was sharp. A silent game where the two knew exactly what was going on, but no one wanted to take the first step. My body burned inside. My heart was accelerated. And the worst? I knew he realized. Suddenly, I felt his nodes on his fingers, brushing lightly on my arm. A minimal touch, but it made the air flee from my lungs. Every inch of my skin answered. The tension grew, and I felt my breath fails. Everything was about to get out of control. I needed to decide. Stay and give in to desire, or leave before it was too late. The next day, everything seemed normal. But it wasn't. Lucas and I pretended that nothing had happened, that the tension of the night before was just a passing moment, but it was impossible to ignore. Each time he passed me, I felt that same shiver. He looked at me in a way that made me burn inside, and the worst part? I wanted to feel that again. The messages started. Small phrases in the middle of the day, disguised as casual conversations, but loaded with a clear subtext. He was playing with me, and I, without realizing it, was already involved in this game. One afternoon, as I kept the toys of his son, Lucas stopped at the living room door and watched me, the fixed gaze, the arms crossed. You know you don't have to hold on, right? My body froze. I should escape from there, but instead, I turned slowly and stared at that man who made my body burn only. With one look, he stepped forward. My heart fired. I felt the proximity, the electricity pulsating between us. I could hear my own breath getting irregular, while every cell of my body shouted for me to leave. But I continued there, stuck at that moment. In that look, I knew I was going too far. But did it still give time to stop? I didn't know what was right or wrong anymore. My body wanted something my mind struggled to refuse. The days passed, and every look, every gesture, every minimum provocation pulled me even deeper into that game. Lucas knew exactly what he was doing. He forced nothing, but he left everything. There, in the air, teasing me, testing my limits. And I was at my limit. That night, as I took a glass of water in the kitchen, I felt a movement behind me. Lucas. He approached slowly, saying nothing. His heat, so close, made me lose control. My body shivered whole when I felt his breathing brushes my neck. Every muscle of mine crashed, waiting, longing. The silence between us was so intense that I could hear the sound of my own heart beating. My breathing was unzipped, and he knew that. But then he retreated. Simple as that. When I turned, I found his fixed gaze on myself, a half smile on my lips, as if it had full control of the situation. I should feel relief, but what I felt was frustration. He was playing with me. And the worst? I had lost this game. For a long time, I could pretend nothing was happening. I could follow with my work, act as if Lucas were just my boss. But we both knew it was too late for that. The eyes, the subtle touches, the tension, everything pushed us into an inevitable destination. And that night, it happened. I was in the room, organizing his son's toys when I felt his presence behind me. I didn't need to look at him. My body reacted first. The shiver went up my skin, even before it touched me. When I turned, our faces were dangerously close. His eyes were fixed on mine, dark, intense. Time seemed to stop. The sound of the rain, the accelerated beats, the silence loaded with desire. And then, without warning, his lips touched mine. The kiss started slowly, hesitantly, but in seconds, everything became a whirlwind. I felt his hand slide to my waist, pulling me closer. My whole body reacted, delivered to a wish that I could no longer deny. His breathing mixed with mine, the heat, the taste, the feeling that that moment was inevitable. It was an intense, forbidden kiss, the kind of thing that should never have happened. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. I had crossed the limit. And now, there was no return. The following days were a mixture of tension and desire. Every time I crossed Lucas around the house, my body remembered what we had done. But I was not the only one who realized the change. Sophia returned from travel earlier, and right away, she felt something different in the air. The eyes Lucas threw me, the small silences, the way he seemed distracted when she spoke. She noticed everything. It was fast. One morning, as I organized the kitchen, I heard her voice taller than usual. Brava! My heart accelerated. I went to the living room and saw Lucas's cell phone in her hands. She held the device hard, her wide eyes with anger. "Who is this, Lucas?" My breath crashed. The silence in the room was suffocating. I could feel the weight of tension in the air. Lucas tried to get his cell phone back, but Sophia retreated. Her gaze turned slowly to me. It was there that I realized. She already knew. Tried to move, do something, but it was frozen. My mind shouted to get out of there, but my legs didn't obey. The secret was no longer a secret. The truth was there, wide open, and at that moment I knew nothing more would be like before. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. Sophia held Lucas's cell phone tightly, her eyes shining with anger. She was shaking. Is that why you were so far away, Lucas? Is that why I felt that something was wrong? Lucas tried to say something, but she raised her hand, interrupting any excuse even before he could invent one. I trusted you. Her voice was embargoed, but firm. My stomach rolled. I wanted to disappear. I tried to take a step back, but Sophia's gaze waged me in place. I was part of it, and there was no running away. Lucas ran a hand through his hair nervously, but I said nothing. It was then that Sophia laughed. A dry laugh, loaded with pain. And you? She stared at me. Did you have fun with this little game? Marina? I felt the floor disappear. There were no more excuses. The silence was unbearable. Lucas looked at me, but did nothing. No word, no attempt to defend me. It was there that I realized. I was never special to him. The heart squeezed. The illusion collapsed right in front of me. Sophia took a deep breath and threw her cell phone on the couch. She didn't shouted, did not scandal. Her pain was worse than any scream. And at that moment, I realized that I no longer belonged to that home. I left that house that same night, without looking back. As I walked down the deserted street, I felt my heavy heart, a mixture of guilt, regret, and something I didn't want to admit, disappointment. I had fallen into a dangerous game. I had confused desire with something else. And, in the end, I discovered in the worst possible way, I was never special to him. Lucas did not try to stop me. No word, no requests for me to stay. It hurt more than anything. For weeks, I relived every detail, every look, every touch, asking me when I should have said no, but there was no return. I learned the lesson in the worst way. Not always what seems irresistible is worth the price you pay. Sometimes what attracts us is precisely what destroys us. And today, looking back, I just have one thing to say. Never allow yourself to be just a hobby in someone's life. I learned to value myself more, to recognize the signs before falling into emotional traps. Because in the end, when the game is over, the only person who suffers is who played thinking it was more than just a piece. And you? Have you ever lived something like? Count in the comments.